When the moon shone like a sharp sickle in the sky, a dark shadow crept through the community of Aba. It came silently with the scent of death, seeking its next victim. Ebuka and Peace were awakened by the wailing cries of their children. It was the demon. It had come for the children they failed to deliver. Story. Once upon a time, in the town of Aba, there lived a man named Ebuka. Ebuka was a hard-working young man who was admired by many in his community for his good looks and tireless commitment to hard work. But beneath the hard-working young man people saw was a desperate man seeking ways to make wealth at all costs. Ebuka and his wife Peace had 3 children, Precious, Cynthia, and Armizi. They were considered to be one of the poorest families in the community as they struggled to make ends meet and could barely afford 2 square meals. Also, their children wore tattered clothes and didn't go to school like the other children in the community because their parents couldn't afford it. The thought of them remaining poor tormented them. One evening, as Ebuka and Peace sat outside their hut, watching their children play, filled with grief, they spoke of their desire for wealth and better life. We work hard, yet we have nothing to show for it, Peace lamented. I know, Ebuka replied, with worries written all over his face. But what can we do? It seems the gods have turned their back on us. Peace sighed deeply. Perhaps there is another way. Ebuka and Peace had heard gossips from the people in the community of a powerful herbalist in the nearby village, a man who was said to have the secrets to immense wealth and power, but it was rumored that his methods were very dark and dangerous. Driven by desperation, Ebuka and Peace made the journey to the herbalist compound. The herbalist, an old man with a horrible eye, listened to their plight. He nodded slowly, his fingers tracing mysterious patterns in the air. He laughed sarcastically and screamed,
"There is a way,"
he said, his voice as dry as rustling leaves.
"But it comes at a great cost. You must be ready to do anything I tell you, and willing to sacrifice your own flesh and blood."
Ebuka and Peace exchanged glances. The weight of the old man's words settled heavily upon them. "What do you mean, old man?" Ebuka asked, though he already knew the answer.
Ha 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 ha.
The old man laughed scornfully.
"The seed of the man,"
the herbalist replied,
"must be offered every 3 years. The child must be given to the gods of prosperity to ensure your wealth."
Ebuka and Peace, hearing this, remained silent, confusion written on their faces. The gravity of the adventure for wealth was hanging over them like a storm cloud. Yet, the promise of riches and power was intoxicating, a lure they could not resist. After sections of silence and a continuous whispering between Ebuka and his wife Peace, Ebuka stood up, took few steps forward, and stopped. "We will do it," he said finally, his voice trembling but determined. And so the pact was made. They were given a black and red cloth, a mirror, and a knife. They were instructed to cover the face of the victim when sleeping, then call forth the spirit in the mirror and stab with the knife. Their first sacrifice was their eldest child, Precious. They did as were instructed by the herbalist. Precious' spirit appeared in the mirror, crying and pleading with her parents not to kill her. Peace wept as she held onto the tiny doll that had been Precious' favorite toy. Ebuka stood by helplessly, looking at his daughter, his face filled with grief and guilt. Sweet memories of his beloved daughter flashed through his mind, but clouded by his desperation to make wealth at all means, drew the knife and stabbed his daughter, Precious. That night was the longest night of their lives. The riches came swiftly. Ebuka and Peace saw their fortune changed overnight. The people in the community marveled at their newfound wealth, never suspecting the dark secret that laid beneath it all, because they believed Ebuka was a hard-working young man whom they admired his commitment and dedication to hard work. Many believed that the gods of the land had finally blessed them. As years passed, Ebuka and Peace made a sinister plan to ensure they could fulfill their pacts without losing more of their own children. They decided that Ebuka would impregnate other women and take their children as offerings to the demon who happens to be the gods of prosperity. In their minds, this was a way to protect their own children while still reaping the benefits of the bargain. This was a plan that initially worked for them, but just for a while. Ebuka used this charm and good looks to woo women from other communities, offering them promises of love and stability. When the children were born, he convinced the mothers to give him custody, telling them he would be taking them to the city so they would be well taken care of. One day, Ebuka met Ineka, and as usual, he promised her wealth and comfort and went on to impregnate her. Ebuka started caressing on how he would love to take the child to the city for a better and more comfortable life. Ineka, who had heard so many beautiful stories about the city and had also dreamt of going there, excited about the news, told Ebuka that she would love to give birth to their child in the city. Ebuka, hearing this from her, told her to stop dreaming about going to the city because she won't be living in the city with them and he'll be going alone with their child. This made Ineka doubtful of Ebuka's love and promises to her and began suspecting every of his moves. One of the nights Ebuka came visiting, Ineka decided to fool him to know his true intention for her and her child. She pretended to be fast asleep, not responding to Ebuka's several attempts to wake her up. Just when she was about giving up on her plans, Ebuka's phone rang. She heard him talking to a lady, telling her not to worry, that Ineka will soon put to bed and he will use a child for their next sacrifice. Ineka could hear the lady's voice clearly, telling Ebuka that they have just 3 months left to perform the sacrifice, which Ebuka assured her he would get the child once delivered. Ineka, who was disappointed, heartbroken, and filled with resentment towards Ebuka, also decided to surprise him. She thought of what she could do to save her child from Ebuka's wicked and evil plans. Ineka patiently waited till the week of her delivery to carry out her own plans. Ebuka and Peace, filled with excitement that finally their long-awaited sacrifice would be born that week, made plans to visit Ineka together. They both agreed to introduce Peace to Ineka as his younger sister, who would stay and help her for a while when she puts to bed. Ineka, pretending to be ignorant of their scheme, warmly received Peace. Ineka interacted smoothly with Peace, avoiding any kinds of suspicious acts. That night, when Ebuka and Peace were asleep, Ineka packed few of her belongings and ran for her dear life. When Ebuka and Peace woke up in the morning, they realized they had been fooled by Ineka. Nemesis had caught up with them. They had no time to undo what had been done to them by Ineka. Their sacrifice was gone. Peace kept shouting, "We have been doomed, we have been doomed, we have been doomed." The time came for them to fulfill their promises to the demon, to sacrifice the man to the gods of prosperity, who kept appearing and reminding them of their promises to the gods. The only option left for them was their children, but they didn't want to sacrifice any of them. They made up their mind to end it all. Very early in the morning the next day, they visited the shrine. The herbalist, who wasn't surprised seeing them, asked what they had come for. Ebuka and Peace, seeing him, hurriedly went on their knees. They told him they didn't want wealth again and didn't have any of their seed to sacrifice to the gods of prosperity. The herbalist mockingly laughed and told them it was too late to turn back.
You can't fool the gods,
he said. Ebuka and his wife pleaded with the herbalist to help beg the gods, but all their pleas fell on deaf ears as the herbalist angrily walked away. Ebuka and Peace, devastated about their visit to the shrine, told their children to come sleep in their room that night, thinking they would be safe there. But they were wrong. In the darkness, the demon came. It was an ancient spirit that had been promised life and power through sacrifice. With Ebuka and Peace unable to fulfill their ends of the bargain, the demon took matters into its own hands. The demon swept through their homes like a vengeful storm. It left a trail of destruction, snuffing out the life of Cynthia and Arinze, the children Ebuka and Peace had protected for years. Ebuka and Peace could only watch in horror as their children's lives were snuffed out of them. The anguish was too much for their minds to bear, and the weight of their guilt crushed them. They were trapped in the prison of their own making. With their minds shattered and their heart broken, they ran mad, and they were found wandering around the village the following day. The community soon found out that Ebuka and his wife Peace traded their children for wealth. Parents warned their children of the dangers of greed and the price of dark bargains. It is a reminder that true wealth is found not in riches but in the love and life of family, and that shortcuts to power and wealth often leads to darkest of places. Proverbs chapter 10 verse 22 says, "The blessing of the Lord it maketh rich, and he addeth no sorrow with it." Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and press the subscribe button. Bye.